Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm an interdisciplinary artist, and introductions are weird. So rather than subjecting you and myself to some awkward bumbling, I'll refer you to my Patreon entry on that topic if you really want to know more about me. Now, obviously, there are millions of art lessons offered on YouTube and on other platforms, so why go with this choice? Well, I think that I can offer a unique approach. Earlier, I used the term interdisciplinary, meaning that I dabble in various forms of expression. But I also believe that everything is interdisciplinary. Nothing exists by itself, and art is a great example of that. It exists within the context of its creation. So, my lessons, rather than focusing purely on technique, although there will be some of that, will be more about the creative process and about helping you find your own unique voice. Now, disclaimer, while I have enough experience that I think I have a good understanding of what works and what doesn't, and I've shown some methods and explained concepts to people, I've never done anything like this before, so please have patience with me while I work on acquiring some basic editing skills and, more importantly, some better equipment. Also, I've been told that my self deprecating humor is annoying, so I parked my insecurities into the captions. Please just ignore them, because that's the best way to get rid of bullies. So let's begin with the first lesson: how to see like an artist. Art lessons, workshops, etc. can be a lot of fun, but they can also be really, really frustrating. And I've attended many, so many. And I've often watched students or attendees arrive in good spirits and leave in frustration. Mostly because they were given exercises without proper explanation, and they blame their own inadequacies for when it doesn't come out the way that they had hoped. They succumb to some stupid pressure to improve or to reach some other artificial goal, and forget what compelled them to come in the first place. Like for fun or as an escape or for therapy or learning a new skill or maybe just to socialize, whatever it was. They forget to have fun. That's a pity. So, as promised, this first lesson will be more theoretical than practical, mostly because I like to talk to myself, but also to explain my teaching philosophy. I will provide some exercise ideas in the end, though, but until then, you'll have to bear with me and my antics. So, basically, the approach that I'm using, that I have found most effective, can be summed up in one sentence. Art is about how you see. What do I mean by that? I mean that art isn't only about technique, about how you use a pencil, a brush, or whatever tool that you're using, but it's arguably more about how you see. I'm using the specific example of visual art here, drawing, painting, sculpting, video, and all that. But you can translate that into any creative field. There are other ways to see than just with your eyes. I know, all this seems kind of obvious, but I feel that it's often neglected. I often hear people say, I can't draw, I suck at this, I have zero talent in that department. That might be true, but more often than not, people who say that just never learned how to look properly. And side note that I will come back to later, this is also what makes each artist unique. Everyone looks differently, sees differently, notices different aspects of things. If it were only about technique, then every piece of art would look the same, right? Okay, so now I sound like I'm contradicting myself. What do I mean by looking properly if everyone is unique and there thus can't be a proper way to see things? Well, let me explain using an example. Say you want to draw a house. As a child, you learn what a house looks like. It has walls, a door, windows, a roof, a chimney. This is what defines a house, right? So later, when you want to draw a specific house, say this one, for example, those are the things you look for. Your brain goes, oh, I recognize that, it's a house. I know how to draw a house. So you check, where are the walls here? Okay, so here's the door, There are 5 windows visible. The roof's here. And yeah, maybe you'll continue with more details. And in the end, it might sort of look like that house, but it will never truly capture that building, its essence. Why? Because you didn't draw the house. You didn't draw this house. You drew a house. You drew the definition of a generic house that you learned as a child. I'll call this labeling, and it happens automatically. It's not our conscious decision. The word, the label house, triggers that generic childhood definition. So this is what we have to learn to suppress as artists. The idea is that you learn to look at that house as an object, as a thing, and not as a house. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what if I want to just draw a generic house and not a specific one? I think that the lesson still applies. Once you ask yourself, what properties do you want your house to have beyond it just being a house? Many typical exercises in art classes are actually specifically meant for that, but it's rarely explained properly, I feel. Again, I'll get to those exercises, but first, let's explore this a little deeper, using another example, a tree. I will also use this example of a tree to explain the various different approaches to solve this problem, and also why every unique method has its merit. So let's start again with our ingrained childhood definition. What makes up a tree? Well, it has a trunk, it has branches, leaves, roots, maybe some fruit. So now let's take a specific tree. This one, for example. Again, like with the house, the brain remembers the definition and automatically refers to it. So here's the trunk. Here are the main branches, a few secondary ones, the leaves. The roots aren't visible here, so I guess we can omit them. Now, why does this look nothing like that nice artistic image that inspired us to draw this in the first place? It's a tree, sure, but is it this tree? No matter how well you learn the technique, how to use a pencil or a brush if you prefer painting, you will never capture the essence of this tree, if this is how you approach it. How do we solve this as artists? Well, because we're all individuals, there's no one solution, no one recipe. But what we can do, like I said, is to divorce ourselves from the term, the label, tree, and look at this thing as an object. And we can look at its properties beyond its definition instead. Let's go through some examples of methods here. 1. Maybe some detail catches your eye. This trunk here, for example. I find it interesting how it's a little crooked, it's gnarly, it changes direction, it twists. And maybe you find a loose piece of bark or some moss. Oh, and by the way, exaggeration can be a good thing. 2. One thing that I like to do is to personify inanimate objects in my mind. Maybe you're an actor and you want to do the stupid cliche thing of finding the tree's motivation. Because why not? So this tree, let's call it Bob, if that helps. What's Bob's motivation? Well, Bob's been growing on this hill for decades, and like most plants, it always wanted to grow toward the sun. But maybe to break the wind, or just because that's how nature works, some of the branches do grow on the other side as well, but kind of reluctantly. Also, to brace itself, and more importantly, to find water, Bob had to grow roots. Now, I said earlier that roots are underground here, but that doesn't mean that we can omit them. They're there, and they're important for Bob. You think you can't see them, but if you look closely, you can actually see how the roots affected the growth around it. The vegetation is different. There are random dents and weird shadows that don't seem to fit. 3. Maybe you're not quite as weird as I am, and what catches your attention aren't those details. Maybe what catches your eye are the colors. The colors aren't just one homogeneous blob. You might notice, for example, how the leaves are more luscious in certain areas, or how they're lighter up on top. Four. Or maybe you're intrigued by the light and the shadows. What you might notice here is that some people are more linear, focused on outlines and lines, and some people are more drawn to surfaces and to shapes. Five. Going more into abstract art, you can see similar differences. I personally like to construct my drawings, which means that I look for construction lines. I feel that it also gives the whole thing more dynamics, if that makes sense. 6. Other artists might just go with whatever emotion the image evokes in them, for example. But I'll explain that in later lessons that are focused on abstract art. In any case, those are just examples, ideas. You have to find your own personal preference, and ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't even have to be technically perfect. The point is that you have to actually look at the object that you want to illustrate. See what you see and make sure that you're drawing or painting or filming what you see and not its label or its definition. So I promised some exercises. There are 2 very common ones that they use in art courses that are specifically meant for this. The first one is to take whatever object you're drawing and to turn it upside down. Of course, it would have to be something that's unrecognizable when it's upside down. A piece of fruit that you can look at any angle won't work, for example. Or this pencil, or this eraser. Your brain should not be able to easily label it, is the point. The second exercise that I think works well for painting especially, and also for charcoal and pastels, is to focus on the negative space. So instead of painting the object, you paint the space around it, everything but the object. The results are always interesting, and it helps you see details that you might not have noticed otherwise. So those are 2 exercises that you can try out. To end this lesson, I will leave you with one last exercise. When you close this, I want you to take an object next to you, any simple object, a glass, a pen, your phone, an apple, the wall, anything, but nothing too complex. Look at it and see what catches your eye. What properties does it have besides what defines it? Are there any details, blemishes, colors, whatever, that you haven't noticed before? You can repeat this exercise whenever you have a few boring minutes. Sitting in a bus, for example. Choose a random simple object. No pencil needed, no brush or chisel or other tool. Just your eyes. Or actually, any of your senses, for that matter. Like I said, there are many ways to see. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that you found this lesson useful and not too confusing. Also, if you're just as annoyed as I am about the focusing and lighting issues and all that, consider supporting me on Patreon so I can get better equipment. Anyway, bye, and don't forget to have fun.